של זהב ושל נחושת ושל אור, הלא לכל שירייך אני כינור.
Okay. Before I start, can I ask from people that are in the back to move to the front, please? So it will be a bit better. Everybody in the back, please move to the front. So welcome, everyone. My name is Avi. Thank you for being with us today as we commemorate Yom HaShoah. As we honor the past, we also reflect on today's challenges, including the plight of the 132 hostages still in Gaza. Yeah, the number went down again a few days ago. I'd like to start by reading an excerpt from a recent post by Israeli influencer Hillel Fuld. Dear European Jews in the 30s, I owe you an apology. For the last 40 years, I have accused you of being blind. I've said it thousands of times. Why didn't they get out? How did they not see the writing on the wall? Were they that comfortable and assimilated that they really believed it'd be okay? And even if they believed that, when Germany started legislating against Jews, how was that not enough of a sign to get out? For years, I thought you were weak. I thought you were led to the gas chambers like sheep to the slaughter. For years, I thought that your mistakes could never be repeated again. I thought we, the Jewish nation, we surely see the writing on the wall. I said never again, and deep down, I thought it would never happen again. Because we, the Jewish people, would never let it happen again. We are not as weak as they were, I told myself. And now I have to say, I'm sorry. I was wrong about you. More precisely, I was wrong about us. It could happen again. The Jewish people would let it happen again. We are letting it happen again. Anti-Semites in the US Congress, yeah. Pop stars declaring their love for Hitler, Banning Jews from entering educational institutions, sadly that happened too. Mass anti-Semitic marches across America, we are there. Jewish women being raped and murdered just because they are Jew. So, my European ancestors, I'm sorry. You aren't weak, and we aren't strong. We are letting them do it to us again, and we are again not reading the writing on the wall. To my brothers and sisters in 2024, please, I beg of you, internalize the lesson of history. It's happening right before your eyes. Don't wait till it's too late. Fuld warned us not to wait until it's too late, and that's why we gather here this afternoon to internalize lessons, to discuss and to reflect. But reflection alone is not enough. We need action. We need action to stop the anti-Semitism, and we need action to bring our hostages home. So now, I ask you, all of you here, to please stand up and make a commitment. If you look to your left and to your right, you will see many familiar faces here. People you've seen at past events or within our community. While this is heartening, we need to go further. So this afternoon, we, all of us, pledge to bring someone new to our next event. Someone Jewish, someone we can learn from, or someone who can contribute to our dialogue. By broadening our community, we step out of our echo chambers, and that is the only way we can spread understanding and dismantle anti-Semitism. Do you agree?
Yes.
I didn't hear.
Yes.
One more.
Yes.
Thank you for standing with us in this commitment. Please take a seat. Now, I'm honored to introduce our distinguished panel. We start from my side, going to the wall, with the son of a survivor and esteemed Holocaust educator, Guido Smith. Next to him, survivor Joe Gottengecker with his granddaughter Lily, representing the strength that spans generations. Next to them is survivor Andy Retty, joined by his daughter Kathy. Following is Stefania Sidbon, another survivor whose courage lights our way. And at the end of the panel, Aiden Natali, a TMU student, who represents his grandfather of blessed memory, survivor Carl Stein, showing us the enduring impact of these histories on the younger generation. Finally, anchoring our panel is Robert Sarner, a writer, editor, and communication specialist who serves as the senior editor at the Friends of the Simon Wiesenthal Center. He's also a regular feature writer for the Times of Israel, and his work continues to challenge, educate, and inspire us all. Please welcome Robert to the stage.
I guess for the first part, I'll stand up and then I'll join our panel. And Avi, thank you for that warm introduction. I also want to thank for all the hard work that Avi and Karen Barzilai and other people who were involved in putting this event together. Hats off to all of you, and thank you for making it happen. I'm certainly honored to be part of it, and especially to be sharing the stage with these distinguished men and women, and younger women too as well. And I'm obviously looking forward to the panel discussion we're going to have in a few minutes. Those are very sobering words we just heard from Avi, and including the words he just quoted. And indeed, we're gathered here on very sobering times when Jews are facing major challenges, which is probably a gross understatement, such as the current reality that we're seeing with, as Avi mentioned, the alarming rise in anti-Semitism. That many Jews are asking themselves if they're not experiencing an ominous sense of deja vu with chilling echoes from the past. As most of us will remember, although now it seems so distant, well before October 7th, of course, anti-Semitism was already on the rise. And of course, since October 7th, it's reached levels here in our supposedly tolerant and multicultural, pluralistic country of Canada that we're now witnessing levels of anti-Semitism that certainly most of us in our lives have never seen before. And this tsunami of anti-Jewish hate comes in many forms. We see it all around us, whether it's in person, whether it's online, whether it's in the streets or on campus. it's inescapable today. And it's getting to the point where I think Jews can be forgiven if they actually dread reading the news every day and even going online and seeing what's being expressed on social media. I know, just speaking for myself, it's really a mixed blessing to go onto social media and to see some of the vile content that if you don't go on social media, you don't know what you're not seeing and what's out there. But obviously our focus is not social media specifically today. But most of all, what's most worrying is that no one knows how much worse things will get before the situation improves. And I don't mean to be depressing, but I know that's how I feel. I don't know how much worse it's going to get. And there is the sense that it will be getting worse before it gets better. And hence what Avi said, all the more reason to be attentive and to take that very much into our serious consideration. Yes, we're here assembled on the eve of Yom HaShoah, almost 7 months to the day, that horrific day of October 7th. As has been often said since then, it was the darkest, deadliest day that the Jews have experienced since the Holocaust. And to varying degrees, we're all still reeling from the horrors of that day, from the trauma. And all of it's been made much worse by what's happened since then in the world where Jews are concerned, and of course by the continued captivity of the hostages. So it's as if October 7th wasn't bad enough. What's transpired in the 7 months since then has just made it all the more worse. For many of us, this troubling return to a climate of fear and exclusion evokes the worst days of the past century and other painful chapters in our history. And all this is what prompted us to have this panel discussion today with survivors and their families. Excuse me. And the testimonies you're about to hear of our panelists are really not just narratives of the past. They're urgent calls to action. Avi referred to a call to action. And these are calls to action in the face of history that seems to be threatening to repeat itself. So now let us turn to our esteemed panelists, and whose insights I hope, will help guide us in our response to the challenges our people are now facing. And their voices not only memorialize the past, but I'm sure they will also inspire and empower us to ensure that the words "never again" are not just words. So with that, I'm now going to take a seat and get the panel discussion going. I just want to mention before we start with the questions that we're hoping to have time for any of you who have questions to our guests to please feel welcome after we do the panel discussion. There will be microphones, I believe. So you'll be able to ask your questions. So nice to join all of you. I'm going to sit down. And it's really, when I was listening to Avi introduced all of you, collectively what you represent is really something. And it was very touching to hear. And I'm sure Avi could have spent 20 minutes introducing each of you. I'd like to start, Joe, with you, if you don't mind. And if you could please start us off by maybe sharing with us briefly, at least briefly, only for the interest of time, your family's experiences during World War II and how those experiences have shaped your perspective and your thoughts in terms of the importance of remembrance and education as well.
Pretty heavy question.
Yes.
I was born in Poland in 1942, and shortly after my birth, I was born in a convent hospital.
Just closer to your mouth.
Oh, is that better? Okay. I was born in Poland in 1942, right in the middle of the war, in a convent hospital in Sandomierz, and my parents had made arrangements for my mother and I to be hidden with a Polish farm family. And shortly thereafter, I mean, right after my birth, we went there. But shortly thereafter, my mother, seeing a fellow student of hers from the university in Krakow, she was concerned about being given up to the Gestapo, so she left and went with the Polish underground. And I stayed there ostensibly as one of their children. And these people saved my life. And as you know, in Poland, harboring Jews was a capital offense with immediate execution. And these people had me there for over 3 years with the danger that existed. And in my perspective, what it did is I have a lot more empathy, compassion, whatever you want to say, to non-Jewish people and what they're going through in some of the parts of the world because of this.
And on the aspect of education, do you have thoughts on the importance of...
Well,
sorry, thank you. The other part of the question was about education, and from your vantage, knowing what you lived through, how do you see the importance of education of it?
education is paramount, and that's why I'm involved with the organizations I am, and speaking out about my experiences. And this is, like I said, paramount. In order for this not to happen again, which unfortunately it is to educate people as to what the ramifications are of hate, of intolerance. And I'm talking not just about anti-Semitism, we're talking about any kind of hate and any kind of intolerance, and all the pogroms and genocides that have happened since World War II. I mean, you don't have to go far, they're happening all the time. And the only way to stop this is to educate people to the reasons why it's happening and why it shouldn't be.
It's interesting what you said, Joe, about you owing your life and your survival to this non-Jewish family that had the courage to hide you. And we do sometimes forget that amid all the terrible darkness of the Holocaust, there was a little bit of light. And by the righteous, obviously far too few in number, but there were those who did defy the forces of evil, and such as in the case that you mentioned, which is a very poignant story. I'd like to turn now to a fellow child survivor, Andy. If you could be so kind to also share a little bit of your story from that period, and on top of which, if you see any parallels, although admittedly you were very, very young when the Holocaust took place, but how do you see, looking back to that period, to today, what parallels, if any, you draw from those two periods?
I mean, I think on
sorry, to start with Andy, we're going to get to you, Lily.
It's okay.
Yeah, sorry, Lily, I want to get to you, but I'd just like to start because we're starting with the fellow child survivors.
You almost read my mind, because up front, I wanted to tell you the three of us are approximately the same age, we're friends, and I want to tell you that distinction between a survivor and an eyewitness. We are not eyewitnesses. We are truly survivors because of the incredible courage and resilience of family or friends. Joe and I have known each other for a long time. I'm also born in 1942. I also owe my life to the courage and determination of a number of upstanders, the people who were willing to help, who were not bystanders. Now, sadly, there are similarities as to what happened during the Shoah, but I'm here to bring you a ray of hope. I'm here to tell you that this is not as hopeless as it was during those dark times. I just came back from a 5-day trip visiting high schools in Ottawa, telling my story, which I have been doing for over 20 years. And I'm here to tell you that the anti-Semitic sentiment is bought and paid for. It is not spontaneous, and it is not from government. Government today is not the way it was during those dark times. Today, the police, who were our enemies, are our friends. I can't tell you how proud and pleased I am that I have been invited by the Chief of Police of Toronto to address the graduating police cadets. I am going there next week for the 4th time, talking to young policemen. I also owe my life to a young policeman. So yes, there are parallels. There is hatred, there is ignorance, and Joe really hit the nail on the head. Education is paramount. But my dear friends, I can tell you my pride that I am able to teach understanding and tolerance to one classroom at a time. And you, my friends, are a big classroom. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Andy, for also the perspective you bring. And I'm sure I can't speak for anyone else, but I'd certainly welcome to hear a little bit of uplifting perspective. Not that we're painting a rosy picture by any stretch, but certainly you do add an interesting perspective. Stefania, of course, another fellow child survivor, and you have a particularly interesting story in the sense that, if I understood correctly, you were among about 300 Jewish men, women, and children who were hidden or found safe haven during the Holocaust, a story that actually has been told and made into a movie, of course, in the Warsaw Zoo, which is a remarkable story in of itself. I understand your father was part of the Jewish resistance, and that he urged your mother to find refuge. And I'm sure your story is obviously extremely compelling, but if you could at least share, I'm sure it won't do justice to the full story, but just briefly with everyone in the audience. First of all, a bit of your story, because it sounds remarkable, and then it's, I guess, a double-barreled question, as if there wasn't enough to answer already. But having seen the news last fall from Israel, seeing what's been happening since, how has that impacted you? And maybe it's unfair putting so much into one question.
To say first, I didn't believe. I didn't believe that I will live the second Shoah. I am the oldest. I am from 1939, February. And like you said, we were sent to the ghetto Warsaw because we were from Warsaw. And in 43, my father came and said to my mom, you have to take the kids and leave the ghetto because we make a uprising, and I don't know if we will survive, but I want you with the kids survive. Then my mom asked, where are we going? Where are you going? And there was a Polish guy that helped us very much. He is righteous among the nations. And he said that the zoo saved people, not for long, 2-3 days. After that, they found a place for the people, and there was always only 2-3 people at a time because they have to feed them. And the crew there in the kitchen didn't know that's what they does. Then my mom one day went there, and they took us, and we were there 2-3 weeks. And once his son went beside the kitchen, and he heard the cooks talking, why they eat so much? There is no food, and they ask for more and more, because they ask for us. And then we have to leave the zoo after 2-3 weeks. And I was sent to a Polish woman, family, my brother to a convent. And they teach him there not to take off his pants when he goes pee, not pee beside somebody, because he was circumstances. And what can I say? I didn't, like I said, I didn't believe that I will live this second Shoah. And today was again. They shoot bombs, and there are 10 people wounded, 4 very bad, and they don't know if they will live, but I hope they will live.
I should perhaps just add, for those of you who perhaps didn't follow the news today, I believe you're referring to the rockets from Gaza that were fired into Israel earlier today. 10 people were wounded. I understood some severely
5.
wounded.
5 very bad.
Badly wounded. So I think that's what Stefania is referring to.
And in school, I was just one Jewish girl between 280. And my name from my family was Königswein, King's Wine. And in Poland, when the teacher came in the class, she called the names of the kids, if everybody is in the class. And she read my name, Königswein. And I said, we don't say Königswein, we said Königswein. And she said, but in German, and I said, I am opposite. I didn't shy and didn't be afraid, and I said, I'm opposite. And she said, what do you mean? I am Jewish. And I was one girl in 280 students in the school. But I was lucky because I was study. And my classmate used to go for a rendezvous in this, and they came always, ask Stefan, give me the answers, and they saved me always. If somebody starts with me, they said, leave her alone. I got good savers.
Interesting.
I didn't never hide that I am Jews.
Very nice to hear that. I'm going to turn now to Guido, to my immediate right. I'm told that you have a layered experience on where the Holocaust is concerned in the past, and maybe you can share also your story and if you see any similarities between that dark past we used to think was very far removed and what we've been witnessing in recent months, recent years, even here in Canada.
Some similarities and some differences. My mother was Jewish. She fled from Germany to Holland 2 weeks before the war broke out. She obviously got through okay because I'm here. During the war, she met my father, who was not Jewish. He was one of the righteous. With a small group of friends, they saved about 270 Jewish youngsters, finding hiding places and so on. At the end, At the end of the war, my mother was pregnant with me, and they went to what was then the British Mandate of Palestine as part of a group of youngsters to form a kibbutz, which became Kibbutz Yakum. And then in 1949, after the War of Independence, my parents decided to go back to Holland. And at that time I was 3.5, so I decided to go with them. And I was raised by, in the Netherlands, surrounded by survivors and members of my father's underground group, so rescuers. So the Holocaust really was very, very central to my upbringing, even though I was born after, launched during, but born after. And I came to Canada when I was 21. When I look at what's going on today at the universities, what comes to mind is that the university activity, the academic world, was a key part of the Nazi strategy. They engaged the academics and academicians to support their policies, and it gave credibility to the rest of the population. The rallies and the book burnings then, they were just as unhinged as what we hear today. And at a wider level, the backdrop is a little bit similar too, in the sense that we had, the big battle of Nazism versus the Allies. And today, this is part of a battle between the totalitarian regimes of the world and the countries that are operating under Western values. So there are some similarities, but also some differences, as Andy also touched on. This is not organized by the state. It may be partially organized by Iran, but not by our states. And as also has been said, we do have Israel now, and I'll touch on that in just a sec. And we now know that the Shoah was possible. So we have a clear idea of what can happen, which back in the 30s people didn't quite appreciate. This really, in some ways, it's actually worse than what the Nazis did, obviously not in the numbers, and there were no gas chambers. But what Hamas did in some level was actually worse. The Nazis at least knew, as much as they might have been proud of what they were doing in terms of their own thinking about ridding the world of Jews, they knew they should hide it. When there was an outbreak from Sobibor, they razed the camp. These guys took pictures of it themselves and broadcast it, and in some cases took the pictures with the victims' phones and sent them to their families. This is 0 degree Kelvin, it doesn't get lower. And yet there is support for it. So, it's absolutely horrendous. Sorry, a little louder. Well, I'm getting close to the end of it anyway, but we do know, we do know now what is possible. That's the one side. I went to Israel in November, December for 6 weeks to volunteer, just do whatever needed doing, and there's a lot of that. And the thing that struck me is, obviously the mood is very, very grim. Just a shock from what happened on October 7, worries about the hostages, worries about the internally displaced people, worries about the soldiers in Gaza, worried about what might happen if the war with Hezbollah opens up, and then the shock at the world reaction. So all of those things are grim. But to watch the way Israeli society pulls together, everybody volunteering, everybody chipping in, is something to behold and something to be part of. And this is something that we should hang on to. And of course, we see it in our own community today. We had a rally at Earl Bales Park in support of the students. And so our community here is also very, very strong. But to watch Israel pull together, it's such a strong society for all of the grimness, for all of the government issues. It's an amazing thing. So there are hopeful pieces in it as well.
Thank you, Guido. You touched on so many important points. We're going to now broaden the voice that you're going to hear and broaden the generational focus. And then, Aidan, I'd like to turn to you now. And first of all, thank you for being part of our panel. It's great to have, as I say, people of different ages. And I know you're going to speak in connection with your late grandfather, I believe, who you never had the privilege or pleasure of knowing. But I'd like you to share a bit of your late grandfather's story, and then I'll let you do that, and then afterwards I have a question for you, because you are a student on campus, which, as we know, have become literally hotbeds of anti-Jewish hate. So I have a couple of questions to you about that, but let's first have you just share with us a little bit the story of your late grandfather.
Yeah, so, oh wow, that's loud. My grandfather, Carl Stein, from my mother's side, he grew up also, he was born in Poland. Everything I know about him is just through stories. He passed away long before I was born. And there are so many stories of different ways he had to survive because he wasn't born like during the Holocaust, he was born before, and then he was already like, I believe 10 or so when the Holocaust had already started. And there are different stories of times where he had to hide in a rain barrel for days on end until the Nazis fled, to when he was brought into Auschwitz and how he had to survive, living in Auschwitz, and at one point being gunned down and finding some help with some non-Jews, as others had said here, and then being brought back into Auschwitz, and from there, after the war ending and the Russians liberating his camp, to finally being able to come and flee into Canada and start a successful business in Vancouver, start a family, and really start a new life, all hundreds of kilometers away in what at the time was a safe haven for him.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Switch periods here now, switch gears a little bit. I believe you're a student at what was formerly Ryerson, the Toronto Metropolitan University.
Yeah.
Which, if it's like any of most of the other universities, I was going to say in Canada, in North America, in the Western world for that matter, have been anything but hospitable to their Jewish students. But if you could share with us firsthand, we read a lot about, we hear terrible stories of what's going on our campuses. These are supposed to be the bastions of enlightenment, higher education and learning, and what we're hearing is anything but. But please, if you could tell us what you as a Jewish student at TMU, what you have been experiencing in recent months. And we all know there's now an encampment at the University of Toronto in our fair city. I'm not sure what's going on at TMU, if there's an encampment there.
So there is no encampment at TMU. Most of students at TMU have just joined the one at U of T, and there's a bunch of coordination between the U of T one, from my understanding, has kind of followed students from TMU, York, U of T, George Brown, all those other colleges within the Toronto district, kind of. But there's a lot that's been going on and a lot of firsthand experiences. It's a little hard to say when to start or what experiences to talk about, but I mean, just the aftermath, I remember on October 7th, I was at a friend's birthday party at, I don't know, from say 9 p.m. to midnight. And then I got a text because my mom was in Israel at the time on October 7th at 12:30, something's going down, everything that. And then I stayed up for the majority of the night. And then the next day, everything going on, showing all the concern and everything, and already seeing people whom I know, who are peers of mine, who are friends of mine, who I've talked a lot about my culture, where I'm from, Jewish, Israeli, all that, and already talking about how a new resistance has occurred, how this is finally freedom, and so on and so forth, on October 8th at 10 a.m. Then there are instances of when, okay, I'm trying to figure out which ones to talk about. So for instance, another time, just also on October 8th, there were some student-run clubs who had posted more about how October 7th was freedom, how it was time to liberate, so on and so forth. And I brought this up to the school, I brought this up to the Human Rights Council, and I had this whole trial kind of with the Tribunal of the Human Rights, and it just went nowhere. They led me on until around December, and then they just stopped answering my emails, and they took into consideration, quote unquote, and then nothing had ever happened since then. All of this is still up and around. Nothing happened to these students, nothing, no apology, nothing. Some other instances just off the top of my head of on campus, There's all the people screaming Intifada revolution. Outside of my main building, there were a time where there were about 4 posters of the hostages, and since it has been spray painted with first a layer of white all over it, and then with a black spray paint on each poster, like from top to bottom, spelling out Gaza, just disrespecting everything that the hostages were going through. One of the hostages actually was Kfir Bibas. That was the top poster, and they just spray painted over it. Walking around campus, I can clearly tell I have a target on my back. I've lost nearly all my friends. Many people who don't talk to me anymore, people who legitimately were friends of mine, not just random people, but like who I have actually, everyone at that party on October 7th has not talked to me ever since October 7th, basically. So it's just all these things of at the end of the day, being Jewish and being born in Canada, but being Jewish.
Well, certainly quite consistent, obviously extremely disturbing and quite consistent with what we're hearing from other campuses, and to hear it firsthand, it makes it all the more alarming. We're going to go now from the university level to a different level of education. And Lily, thank you for being with us, and it's great that we can get your perspective from where you're a student. First of all, what grade are you in, Lily?
I'm in grade 7.
Grade 7. And I know it's not a university campus, of course, but I'm curious if at your level in grade 7, if you've had any experiences that you feel comfortable to share with us that would relate to what our discussion is. And you as a Jewish student in grade 7, have you faced any negative experiences because of your Jewish identity?
Definitely, actually. I have a friend who's Jewish, and we both receive comments and jokes about being Jewish or about the Holocaust that's completely inappropriate. And I've brought it up with teachers, and they do stuff, but there's only so much you can do, and you get it all the time. I remember once I was in an after-school program, and we were playing a game, and someone said that the Holocaust story was boring, and me and my friend were just shocked, because it was a friend of mine too, and I just can't believe she said that. It was very uncalled for, and he'd definitely receive it. Even in grade 7, it's very shocking, but it's definitely reality.
Do you notice any difference post-October 7th? Do you recall, let's say last year when you were in grade 6, similar experience? Do you feel it has worsened since October 7th?
Definitely. I didn't receive much in grade 6, but definitely my friends speaking out like he said, freedom and just inappropriate stuff. But yeah, freedom, and definitely online too. You see a lot of it, posts about freedom and protesting, and it's just very uncomfortable.
I'm sorry to hear that. We're going to come back to later in the
I'd
discussion.
just like to add something here. Lily goes to a very progressive private school called Country Day School. So that maybe has a different element to a regular public school, which I thought would not have any anti-Semitism, which, as she has explained, it's reached even into those schools.
Well, that's a telling sign right there. Kathy, thank you for being so patient. You're the last one we've gotten to, and no discrimination, please. Don't feel that that's a slight. Being the daughter of Andy, and obviously knowing your dad's story so well, and hearing it, I'm sure, many times, I'm curious what impact you feel that's had on you, growing up in the shadow of your father's obviously very compelling story. So there's such a close proximity to the Holocaust, even if obviously you were born well after. But how has that impacted your upbringing and your overall perspective on when you see what's happening today?
I'm a unique case because I'm first and second generation after the Holocaust. I'm daughter and granddaughter of survivors. So I grew up in a household where education was key. I've been participating in Holocaust Education Week since I was 5 years old and wrote my first poem. I was very proud to be growing up in the family that I did, where my grandmother wrote a book about her story. My father wrote a book about his story. Yes, mine's coming. I need to finish living first. But education, and I've been blessed and lucky enough to go with my father to many of his speeches to schools. It's always wonderful to speak to a Jewish class, but I always feel that the Jews know our own history. It's more prominent when we go to Catholic and Christian schools. It's very impactful, and it's amazing to see the responses in these young children. So for me, education is ingrained in me, and it's so nice to be able to witness my father educating other young people. We had, just 2 weeks ago, a little tour in Grimsby and Niagara, Catholic schools, and my father's presentation is never the same twice. If you get to see it again, because it's never the same. It's very interesting. But he illustrates points very, very well, and he makes everybody stand up at the end to take this pledge, never again. And it's heartwarming. So as much as it's terrible to see what's going on in the world, to see these young people and stand up and really understand where he's coming from and what the words never again mean, it's amazing. So I feel very blessed and lucky to grow up with education as such a key focus in my upbringing. And I'm very much the person that all of my friends go to when anything is happening in the world, to ask what's really happening, which I'm also very grateful for, because as most people know, the mainstream media doesn't always tell you the truth. So I am grateful and blessed to be able to share my knowledge, although it's not as vast as some of the other people here, but to be able to educate and hope that we can stand as a community together and really mean never again, especially now.
Staying with you for a moment, Kathy, mentioning that you're both the daughter, you mentioned you're both the daughter and the granddaughter of survivors. Does that make you more fearful when you see what's happening today?
Absolutely. On October 26th, I was on my way to work in a car and got caught up in a pro-Palestine demonstration that was terrifying. I was panicked. First thing I did to make sure was make sure that my chai was not visible, which was a terrible feeling to be in Canada in 2023, being first and second generation, knowing my family's history, to make sure that I had nothing visible to show that I was a Jew. It was horrifying. It was, I'm sure not to the extent that you had, but I was in my car, but just the anger and the hatred that was coming towards me, where the police, we had to stop and let the protesters go. It was one of the most terrifying things that I've experienced, and it just, my whole family story from both sides came flooding back going, how is this happening here in Canada, in the place of freedom, in the place where my family escaped to live freely? How is this happening? How am I fearing for my life just because I'm Jewish? And making sure that I had no visible signs that they could tell that I was a Jew. It was one of the most terrifying experiences. Thankfully, nothing happened, but just that fear was nothing compared to what my family or any survivor had been to, but just the fact that I had experienced it and the fact that I had to make sure that I had nothing visible showing that I was Jewish. It was traumatic and stayed with me, and it will stay with me, and I've been trying to talk to friends and family about it, about what happened. It's just, it's disheartening that it's happening and it's here. It's everywhere, but it's even more difficult for me to experience it firsthand.
Thank you. Speaking of difficulty, I'd like to come back to you, Joe, for a moment. I know many of us have in the shadow of what's happened on October 7th and since, many of us I know, I've had this discussion with friends and colleagues, we ask ourselves what it must be like for survivors. It's hard enough for those of us born after the war to see what's happened. But we can only imagine that for someone who has a direct, first-hand link to the Holocaust, to witness, I've even heard people say, you know, my grandparents were survivors. Fortunately, they're no longer alive, but I'm thankful they're not alive to witness what's going on today. I've heard people say that to me. Of course, they feel terribly their grandparents are no longer alive, but they say this would be excruciating for their grandparents, their survivors. So I'm just wondering, from your vantage, and we're hearing other difficulties from the other generations, and they didn't live through the Holocaust, but what it is for you to experience what we're all seeing since on October 7th and since.
Well, I, like Andy, really didn't experience the horrors of the
Right.
Holocaust like my parents, Shabbat Shalom, did, and so many others. But because I'm in this community, and so I know so much about it, and it's almost unbelievable that it's happening again. But I think the difference between now and then is we have Israel. Then we didn't have Israel, and now we do, and it's not going to happen again because of Israel. I did a motorcycle ride through Europe. It's called Back to Berlin. It's on YouTube if anybody wants to see it, with 12 Israelis. And I survived, because riding a motorcycle with 12 Israelis is a very harrowing experience. And yeah, and but meeting them and speaking to them, and in the film, I was asked, how do you feel about this happening again? And I pointed out the people I was riding with, who were junior to me, that because of them, this won't happen again, and how they feel about it, and how Israel is so important.
Well, that's probably one of the most important things we can take away. We all pray you're right. I don't know, there's no guarantees out there, but thank you for sharing that. I'm told we have time's winding down, but Guido, I'd like to come back to you again for a moment in our limited time that's left. And what do you think younger generations, not so much the Jewish ones, but the young generations out there, what do they need to hear that will help really address what's going on? And you know, there are people who say that even we have failed the Holocaust education that has been done in the West. There are those who believe it's actually been a failure, which I know is part of a much larger debate, but I'd be curious anyhow what you feel younger generations have to hear.
So I've been doing Holocaust education for 13 years, and I would say, apart from raising my sons, it's one of the most rewarding things I have done. And you don't reach all of the kids in any class, but you always reach some, and it really feels like you make a connection. I'll add an asterisk, by the way, to something that Kathy said. My experience was actually a little bit different. Jewish students often do not know quite as much as they think they do, but in any case. So my quick reaction when this all blew up and the rising anti-Semitism turned into out-and-out Jew hatred was also that sense that it was a failure. All of this effort was for nothing. And I've adjusted my thinking on this, because I think at the high school level, when Andy goes out and others go out, it does make an impact at that level. Where it goes wrong, in my opinion, is at the university level, where faculties and management have been taken over by a woke ideology, and I'm not trying to go into politics here. So that's what needs to be attacked, if you will. And the messages of why Western values, Jewish values, Judeo-Christian values are still important. That needs to be reinforced. And at the moment it's not. We're almost ashamed of our Western culture. So one thing we can do is be proud of being Jewish and the values that we stand for. We really need to find any avenue to influence university administrations and to help with your experiences, Aidan, because that's got to be very, very rough to be in the middle of that. We also need to interact with as many allies as we can in multicultural events. We do have allies. We have non-Jewish people, Christian people, Iranian people, Muslims Facing Tomorrow. It's one of the organizations that I'm connected with, and the Canadians Muslims Against Anti-Semitism. they are strong allies, and we need to do as many of those things as we possibly can. And I would encourage the government of Israel, the Foreign Affairs Ministry, to put money into those kinds of efforts in Canada and anywhere else.
Thank you.
By the way, if I may add, one of the things that I think many people in the Jewish community do not adequately understand is the legal underpinnings for our rights to the state of Israel. And as a Canadian international lawyer of amazing stature, Dr. Jacques Gauthier, who's done phenomenal work on this. And he was just teaching at one of the other synagogues in the city just a few weeks ago. And we need to get him into as many shuls as we possibly can so that we know what our rights are and what our history is. We need to understand it better.
I know we're getting tight for time. To wrap things up, I'd like to turn to our youngest panelist, Lily. And I think it's appropriate because you represent our future. And after listening to your co-panelists today and this discussion and the remarks by Avi at the beginning, and knowing what you know and what you're seeing, how do you see the future as a Jewish person? I'm putting you on the spot. That's a tough question. I hope you don't mind.
No, it's good. I think I see it in many ways. I see it going bad. I see it going good. But I think I see action, and I think we need action to make it good. And if we want a good outcome, it really comes down to taking that next step and acting out and not letting it happen.
Are you optimistic or pessimistic about the future?
I think I'm optimistic because I think people, if we educate, people will understand how important it is that we act now and not later, and not when it gets worse, but that we act now. And I think we have a good future. We just need to take that next step. And I think people are learning that it's how important it is to take that next step.
Well, if there's more young people like you, then we can look forward to the future. Unfortunately, for reasons of time, we have to conclude the panel discussion. I do want to thank all the panelists. Obviously, we couldn't do justice to each of you in this limited time frame, but thank you so much for participating and bringing your important voices to this discussion.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Can you take down the chairs? Of course. We're going to leave these three.
Okay. Thank you again, Robert, for guiding our discussion, and thank you to the entire panel. Now, I want you to please welcome Anat Krieger and Yav Sova as they're going to perform a song, Eli Eli, a poignant song written by Chana Senesh, a paratrooper and poet who bravely resisted during World War II. Her words echo the strength of those who stand against adversity. So please welcome Anat and Yahav. Thank you so much, Anat and Yahav. As I said in the beginning, while today we honor the past, we must also think about the present. Beyond the surging anti-Semitism, we also have still 132 hostages still in Gaza. Michael Gilboa-Hermel is a registered psychologist with the College of Psychologists of Ontario. Trained in Israel, Michael is deeply committed to fostering a therapeutic environment that is empathetic and non-judgmental. Michael joined us this afternoon to lead a discussion with hostage family members Maureen Leshem and Maayan Shavit on the complex emotional landscape we are all dealing with following the events of October 7. Please welcome our panel.
Okay, hi. It's working? Yeah. Hi. So I'm Michal, and I'm very honored to be here with the two of you. So far, I just heard you on stages. So it's a special experience to be sitting here with the two of you. For those of you who don't know, Maayan Shavit is Carmel Gat's cousin. Carmel was taken hostage on October 7th and has been in Gaza since then. Her mother, Kinneret, who is Maayan's aunt, was murdered in Be'eri a week before her 70th birthday. And Yarden came back on day 54 here. And Maureen Leshem is Romi Gunen's cousin. Romi was abducted from the Nova Music Festival. What's known is that she was shot in her hand, and the information that they have is that she never got medical treatment for it. She was held hostage with the female soldier hostages, and what was known about her 3 months after she was abducted, there was no information after that, was that she was cooking. She was guarded the whole time by 2 terrorists, and with the one hand she was cooking for them, she was doing different works, and that's the information that we have so far. And both Maayan and Maureen have been talking at every rally and event, and have been trying to be a voice for those who don't have a voice. And we're thinking, or I was thinking today, to maybe try and hear your voice, not just as the voice of Carmel and Romi and the other hostages, but as Maayan and as Maureen. So I think we'll start with asking you to maybe share something, tell us something about yourself, other than, hi, I'm Maayan Shavit and I'm Carmel Gat's cousin. So maybe we'll start with you. What can you share with us?
Well, my name is Maayan. I am a single mother for almost a 17-year-old boy, or a little man. I've been here in Canada for almost 13 years. Wow. When we arrived, my son was 4. I'm a chef, or I'm a cook, whatever you want to call it. I teach horseback riding and therapeutic horseback riding, or I used to. And I don't know, it really feels like since October 7.
You became Maayan, Carmel Gat's cousin.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. And nothing matter anymore, because this whole situation just doesn't make sense.
It's true, it doesn't. But Thank you.
So I've gotten to know Maayan since October 7th, and I had no idea that she taught horseback riding, because the only thing we really, I think, know about each other is the pain and the sadness, and Romy and Carmel. So it's interesting that you say that, because that's new to me. In saying that, I'm a mother as well. I've got 2 girls. I run an organization that supports women who have fled domestic violence and human trafficking. Before October 7th, I was a very private, humble person. I am an introvert. That's how I lead my life. But most people that have met me after October 7th are very surprised when I say that I am. But I am most comfortable not doing any type of public speaking. But since October 7th, I have forced myself to get out of my comfort zone, because if we don't speak and we don't advocate, who's going to hear the stories? Who's going to see the videos? Who's going to be held accountable? So it's draining, but it's necessary.
Thank you. So can you tell us a little about your life since October 7th? What do your life look like? What do you do?
Well, when it happened, I think I just shocked and then numb, and I couldn't continue working, stopped working for almost 2 months until I just said and I was just cooped 24/7 in front of the television. All the channels were on, and I just almost disappeared completely from all this grief. And actually, I didn't have grief yet, but all the pain and sadness. And that's when actually the community came in and stepped in, and my dear friend Dainat, stepped in and found me a job from that moment, that the day I told them I need a job to get out, and it happened. And all the rallies, and I have to be honest, without the community, I don't know if I could have continued, because I didn't want, I didn't even pull in my son. Now, I talk to a lot of parents, and they all, including yourself, that their kids are very involved. I came to Canada not to be in Israel, not to be in all this chaotic life, and bombing and shooting and Tseva Adom. And we came here to Canada because we knew Canada is like quiet, nothing happened here, there's nothing going on, we like that quiet and boredom. That's what we looked for, and of course to give opportunities to my son that he would never have if we would have stayed in Israel. So I wanted him to grow up in the Canadian bubble, because that's how I see the Canadian. They're in a bubble. They don't really have a lot of really knowing what's going on, And I love it. I'm not saying it in a bad, I love it. And that's why I'm here already 13 years. And I don't feel that I need to pull my son into this. I gave him the opportunity, the chance. I told him, you can look, not the horrible, in the beginning when all the horrible, film were on. I said, please don't. If you want to see something specific, come to me. But I'm not going to force you to really know what's going on. That's why you're here. And sometimes I feel guilty, because all my friends, their kids are very involved, and mine is not. And I don't know what is the right answer when it comes to this, because that was the choice that I came here. I'm Israeli.
But he doesn't have to be.
No. I'm a proud Israeli. He wasn't raised in Israel. He was only born in Israel. So it's part of the things that I was very torn in the beginning of what to do. Am I showing him? Am I talking to him? Am I telling him all this information? Even about my own, our family. What am I telling him? How much do what happened? How did she was murdered? How did they been taken from their home? those 2 days that we didn't even know anything until we figured out that my cousins, you know, they succeeded to jump from the car, and only my cousin and his daughter escaped, and his wife was kidnapped again. It was just a roller coaster. That what do you do?
So all of those questions that we had as parents, what to tell our kids, we had more choice, but to protect them, to maybe wait with it. For you, it was very different. These were very different questions. These were very personal questions of what I can share, what should he know. It's his own family.
Yeah, but that's when I just turned toward the community and my friends, and I just, you know, I said, okay, if I need something, you know, to just get it off my chest, I have my people. And I can leave my son to be Canadian, you know, and that's the path I chose because I just didn't know what to do.
You're also very active on social media.
I'm very
Something
active.
that you mentioned when we talked.
And yeah, and this is actually something, if you don't mind, I would like to tell everybody, share. Share and share again. You have non-Jewish friends. They will share it. And it will go on and on and on. But don't stop sharing just because you shared something once. Share it again. It's the never forget. That's why we keep on sharing.
Were you an activist? Just a quick question. Were you an activist before too? Were you active on social media? Were you...
No, like Maureen, I was anonymous. I liked being the anonymous, quiet work, you know, my couple of friends, and that's it. Not too much, definitely not such a big crowd. I'm not a shy person, so I never had a problem talking in, you know,
Well,
in
you are
public.
Israeli, so...
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I have that chutzpah, but, you know, it's still personal, and I like to keep my personal to myself.
Okay.
So I wish I could go back to be anonymous.
Thank you. What about you?
How
have your life
daily
changed?
No, that's
What
okay.
do they look like today?
Mostly a lot of sadness. You know, there's moments of pride. I have done an incredible amount of self-reflecting. I have re-evaluated friendships, relationships, people that I work with. I've definitely spent an immense amount of time looking at myself, looking at, you know, at the past, just my life, where I place my energy, who I give my time to, who I give my money to, who I give my energy to. I used to always say, Abba, who do I vote for? And whoever he told me, I'd go and I'd vote for that person, and that was it. And now I've made a commitment to myself to educate myself on politics because I see the value in it. I speak in public, which is something that I've never done before. Even at my own wedding, my husband forced me to get up, and I sat right back down. And he was okay behind the mic. Constantly meeting new people. Doesn't matter where I go. I could be at the coffee shop, and it's people talking, and I think that's her, and which is incredibly bizarre for me. But grateful that people, you know, remember hearing certain things that I've said, or to know possibly that I've inspired someone to do something. It's changed. I'm trying to find a balance between work and advocacy, which is incredibly, incredibly difficult.
What do you miss the most from before October 7th? What would you go back to the moment you could?
I think first and foremost, it's my innocence regarding anti-Semitism. This was a rude awakening, but I realize now how dangerous it is for me to not listen to what I'm being told by those around me. I work in the gender-based violence sector. I work, every day helping people. And it's amazing to see women's organizations, those who purport to stand up and advocate for women's rights, remain completely silent. It is happening, I can tell you that, with victim service organizations, with police services. I think if you're immersed in it, you really know what it is, and the silence. I miss believing that most people are good. I don't think that anymore. Before I started my advocacy work, I spent the first part of my career in working for the Ministry of Correctional Services. I worked in prisons with murderers and rapists, and
at that time, you still believed that most people are
did.
good?
I thought I had seen the absolute worst of humanity, and I never feared anything. I'm this barely, I'm 5 foot something, 100 pounds wet, and nothing, zero fear. I could walk into a prison with no guards, with 10 inmates around me, and I could handle them like nothing. And now sometimes I'm afraid to go to Yorkdale with my Magen David on. And so I miss that.
I miss it too.
I have to say something about this that I keep hearing. And again, this I can only speak for me. But I can only speak for myself. But if I wasn't afraid before, and I knew I will never, with who I am, I will never hide it. So after October 7, for me, it just got even bigger. I will never, ever hide the fact that I'm an Israeli, a Jewish. Again, we had this conversation before, how different without it. I just don't understand the fear. This is where we give them the power to continue and do what they're doing, because we are the one that's hiding. We keep acting like the lamb instead of, just say enough is enough. I don't understand where all this fear comes from, especially here in Canada. This is not USA, this is not Israel, this is Canada. And I always said, if I get to the point that I'll be afraid of my identity, I'm going back to Israel. The safest place for all the Jews. I'm sorry.
I listen to you, and as Israeli, I can relate, but I think that there is something maybe almost different in our DNA.
What are they gonna do? Are they gonna hit you? Are they gonna attack you? In the middle of the mall? I go with all of this. My car is full of flag. I work with Muslims. I don't see I really don't understand.
But just because you don't see it, because you don't see it or you don't feel it, it doesn't make it less
say it's not
real.
Here. Anti-Semitism in Europe, and I have seen in the world anti-Semitism, started long ago.
I think that we're raised a little bit different. I remember a story from one of my first visits here. I have family here, I have cousins here, and one of my first visits, I was 13, and my cousin, who's a year older, was dating, and he was shocked to hear that I never asked for a last name. I take it for granted that whoever I'm dating is Jewish. I grew up in Israel. It never occurred to me that I needed to ask. But for him, it was second nature. He knew there was something different. You're raised different. There is different hypervigilance. And I think it could be, we have things that we carry. There is intergenerational trauma. And we heard just a few minutes ago our older generation and their trauma, and this is passed on from generation to generation. And When you're raised in Israel, what?
And when is it going to stop, this fear from who you are? Why are we the only nation that need to hide who we are all the time?
I think
I'm
maybe...
sorry, I really don't... All my life, I never understood why I need to be the victim. Why do I need to hide that I'm Jewish? I don't think that anybody that asks me from where I'm from or what my last name is here to hurt me. Or if I'll tell him I'm Jewish, or, oh, no, I'm sorry, I don't want to talk to you.
You know, I think that there is a difference between how we feel and how we behave. And for some of us, the fear is ingrained in us. It's ingrained in our parents, and people that moved here from Europe have carried that fear with them. The people that moved to Israel were raised differently and raised their children differently. But the fact that some people are afraid, it doesn't mean that the fear motivates them. You know, can I share
and it sure
something?
doesn't make them victims either.
No.
Can
I share something from your
Yeah,
story
of
that you
course.
told me?
Yeah.
Maureen, for example, shared with me that she had a concussion, and she never knows when she goes on stage if she'll be able to continue her sentences or she'll lose track in the middle and will be embarrassed, will feel uncomfortable.
I have my notes.
And she still goes on all of those stages, and this is a small place. I've seen her talk to huge crowds, much bigger, not knowing if, you know, she'll forget her words. She's scared, but she's doing it. And I think we'll get back to it in a minute because we're almost out of time, and I wanted to ask you questions about, you know, the process of healing and what you need for the community to heal. But we had a conversation before, and when I asked that, Maureen looked at me and said, "Healing? There's no healing. What are you talking about?" And Mayan said, I work on autopilot. I don't stop to think. There's no thinking. And it's true, you know, I imagine that there are lots of people here in this room or people that you know that are at the exact same place. So I did want to, maybe I was asked to add some suggestions, and I wanted to say something about healing. Because for us to heal, we need to know what we're healing from. And we don't know. This is an event that didn't end. When we're talking about trauma and we're talking about trauma therapy and we're talking about post-traumatic stress disorder, there's post. There's no post yet. We don't know where each of us will be at the end of this thing. Right now, this is a continuous community trauma that's happening to a whole community in the world, in Israel, to the Jewish community, to the Israeli community, in all of those very many different levels. And thinking that we need to be better, or that there is something that we can do to be better, is beautiful and sweet and naive, and I wish I had an answer. But some of the things that I think can help everyone, and I think that you're demonstrating exactly that, is that we can be active where we can. We can take control where we can. For some of us, it would be to maybe support our neighbor. For some of us, it would be advocacy. For some of us, it would be the way that we choose to raise our children. But we can each take control in our own little life and whatever we can in order to feel stronger, in order to not feel like a victim. When we feel that we're out of control, this is when we start becoming more anxious. This is where we become scared. This is where when we become victims. And I want to encourage everyone to do what they are doing and try to do what you can in your lives. And focus on the present. The future, I loved what Lily said. It was beautiful. It was, well, we'll fight and we'll be okay. She said, we have to take action. We'll take action and then we'll be okay. But the future right now is unknown and is scary. I'm trying to think how many times my mom had told me in the past few years between COVID and this, and I don't have advice to give you. Like, I'm going through those things with you for the first time. I know I'm your mom and I'm supposed to give you some advice, and I don't have one for you. Because we really, really don't know what's waiting for us. But I do want to encourage everyone to focus on the present and what you can do right now. And Maureen has, I think, some things to tell us that will close this.
I think I'm going to read it. Is that where I read? Okay.
I think you need that moment.
Do you need this one?
This one?
This is
You can have that.
okay. Sure.
Okay, so thank you to the organizers of tonight's event, all of the panelists, and all of you who took the time to join us tonight. Now that we've had this panel discussion, you know a little bit about where I come from and where I stand. I used to be able to tell you where I was headed. I used to have a clear image in my mind of the beautiful world we could create if we worked together to preserve the rights and dignity of those in need, if we worked towards eradicating violence and hatred. I used to have such incredible hope for the future. The brutality of being in this moment in time is not lost on me. I recognize that it's hard to create beautiful things from a place of fear in an atmosphere of cruelty and abuse. But I also believe that when we harness our grief and loss, we gain hyper-clarity. In our grief, suddenly everything else has fallen away, and all that's left is our singular mission to free the hostages and to keep the Jewish people safe wherever they live in the world. As Jews, we share a unique intergenerational experience of persecution and trauma. For most of our lives, we have turned to Holocaust survivors for the wisdom embedded in their memories. And now we look to October 7 pogrom survivors for their experience as well. We share a moral imperative to bear witness to their similar and incomparable pain, loss, and survival. We are, all of us, living the future history of the Jewish people. I shudder to think that the worst of humanity may still be ahead of us. What we do in this moment, how we respond, and the choices we make will shape the world we leave for our children. With the gut-wrenching scenes from October 7th literally at our fingertips, it is easy to look, but also to look away. Many of us spend a good chunk of our days existing in a state of disbelief. Many are feeling helpless, fatigued, disoriented, in a world that appears to have lost all sense of humanity. I beg you to resist the urge to look away. Now is the time to have courageous conversations. Now is the time to take decisive action. Things are always more frightening when it's dark outside, and right now the world is very dark. But all of us need to be doing something productive with our newfound clarity. There is no way around this mess but through it. If you are not yet doing something to help, what is your plan? We cannot sit back and let others do all the work. So many of us are sitting in sadness, but also anger, and it is immobilizing us. My dear friend, Dr. Jeffrey Bernholtz, recently shared this brilliant take with me. The natural response to injustice is anger. Let me say that again. The natural response to injustice is anger. We see anger as vacant, self-consuming, and destructive. But when we reinterpret anger as passion, then we can use its power to focus on what we want to achieve, on righteous advocacy. I know firsthand that taking action can be exhausting. Our efforts can feel like a futile drop of water in a tidal wave of hatred. It has been 7 long, agonizing months of devastating news. And yet, in the grand scheme of things, many of us have been united and mobilized for just 7 short months. Imagine what we can do if we accomplish if we push the rest of us to do a little more. We can and must demand more from our leaders and ourselves. When the world insists on inverting reality, we must share the truth. When the world insists on dehumanizing us, we must retain our humanity. And when the world insists on destruction, we must continue to create. And that is what I'm trying to do now. I'm trying to find the balance between fighting and living, between grief and hope. And I hope you are making this commitment too. And if you're not sure where to begin, you're in the perfect place. I'm going to hand the mic over to Avi for some guidance.
Thank you to Michal, Maureen, and Maayan. May strength be with all of us. Later on tonight, Maureen spoke about taking action. We took action earlier today when I asked you to stand up and take a pledge. Later on tonight, you will receive an email from me with a request to take another action. You will have a list of different actions that you can make, and I will ask you to send me back that email with the action that you're going to take. And in a couple of weeks, we will check with you to see if you were able to accomplish these actions. Now, we're going to be joined by a special guest that got here all the way from Israel, from Gaza, Roy Cohen, an IDF soldier who served in Gaza for 4 months, and now he's engaging with communities about his experiences, raising awareness, and fundraising for wounded soldiers. Please join me in welcoming Roy.
Hi, thank you everyone. Hey Tzila, I know you can hear me today. Tzila Katz was born in 1932 in a small village of Mofa, Ukraine. Tzila was 7 years old when the war started. During the war, her father and his sister murdered by the Nazis. She survived and made Aliyah. Last year, at the age 89, she passed away and left behind her a beautiful family in Israel. I had the amazing opportunity to volunteer with Tzila for 7 years. So Tzila Katz, this speech is for you. Today, I'm right here with you, hostages family, Jewish community, and my very own family right there. I'm here because of you. I'm here for you. I would like to share with you a short story from Gaza. So as Avi said, I served in Maglan unit, the Special Forces of Israel, for 4 years. We were the first ground force that entered the Gaza Strip. We received an intelligence about possible hostages around the mosque. We've been in Bet Hanun, north of Gaza. Our force raided the building next to the mosque. But it actually was a bait trap, and the building exploded. The house collapsed, and we lost 4 soldiers, brothers, friends, and another 6 combats were wounded badly. We got the information through the radio, and we went into the area, fearless. You know why we were fearless? Because we knew that we are together. Because I know my people. Because I know that you trust me. I know that I carry on my history and my family on my own shoulders. Because we felt the responsibility for our nations here, right over here. You see, this is about the same story. For thousands of years, different nations tried to destroy us. So did the Nazis try to do the Tzilas family. So does Hamas, so does Hezbollah, so does Iran. There is no doubt that we are going to win. I'm able to be here today because of my squad, because right now they are in Gaza. Today, they just came back. And I'm here because of them. And I want you to tell you that we are going to fight until 132 people, hostages, will come back home. As we don't forget 6 million people that murdered during the Holocaust, we won't forget that people, those 132 hostages, those people who sacrificed themselves, their body, their soul, that we can be here today. Am Yisrael Chai. It is hard time for all of us. It is almost impossible to see the end right now, I know that. But we are going to get through it. As the people during the Holocaust barely saw the light and did not give up. The fact that we are standing right here together today proves that we won. You understand? We are going to win. Look at my eyes. I'm going to come back in 2 weeks to Miluim again. And I'll do that for you. I'll do that for you guys. For all of you. Those are my brothers. You can see Tila right here, a gift that she gave me when I was 18. And I would like to share with you the video, please. So I'm here on behalf of Tikvot non-profit organization, which is an organization that helped wounded soldiers to come back to their life through sports. So after 4 months, after I'm a combat medic, as I said, we treated one of our soldiers. I want to show you how victory looks like. צילה כץ, אני אוהב אותך ומתגעגע, ואהבת לרעך כמוך. תודה רבה.
Thank you, Roy. Now, let us take a moment to honor and thank all the brave soldiers, like Roy, whose dedication and sacrifices protect and inspire us. I would like to conclude the evening by inviting Anat and Yahav back to the stage to lead us all in Hatikva. Thank you everyone for coming. Please remember your pledge from earlier and your actions that you'll do tonight. We need allies now more than ever, and it is so important to go beyond our comfort zone, to include more people in our fight against anti-Semitism and our fight to bring them home now. I'm Israel Chai, and good night everyone.